What's your sense of what the Bank of England did yesterday? I think it's fair to say, as last month, the financial markets were expecting a half-point rate rise. They only got a quarter.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. As you say, Liam, central banks across the world are, under pressure to up interest rates to rein in inflation, which just remains rampant. And with the US, as you quite rightly said, 2 days ago, the Fed upped it by 75 basis points.
Yeah.
And that's following inflation figures.
That was eye-catching, wasn't it? I didn't expect that.
Yeah, well, following inflation figures which show that inflation rose by 8.6% in the US. And some people thought, some economists thought the same might happen, something similar might happen in the UK, might up it by 50 basis points, but they didn't. And the simple reason is it's because the Bank of England doesn't want to up rates too much because they don't necessarily want to push the economy, which appears on the cusp of a recession, into a full-blown recession, it seems.
That's their main argument, isn't it? We've had 2 successive months now of negative growth, economic contraction in both March and April on the preliminary figures, though they could change. And so the Bank of England's argument is that it doesn't want to be too hasty and it doesn't want to push the economy deeper into slowdown than it otherwise would. Vicky Price, let's turn to you. You and I have often discussed interest rates over the recent months, indeed over recent years. You're generally, if I may say so, more dovish than me. You're more cautious about raising interest rates. You're less concerned about inflation than I am. It's a personal thing, I guess. So I'm interested in your view. Do you agree with the Bank of England that it only raised interest rates by 0.25% yesterday, rather than a half?
You probably know my answer to that, which is yes, I agree with what they've done. But it's interesting, in your introduction, you mentioned how there are loads of Treasury insiders, if you like. Yes, there are some people there who used to be at the Treasury who are deputy governors, but there are loads of independent members as well. And it's interesting that a number of those independent members have, if anything, been more dovish, if you want to call them that, than others in the Monetary Policy Committee. So that's the first point. The second point, the Bank of England was already forecasting, just when they raised interest rates last time, that there would be no growth in the economy practically from the middle of this year, well, certainly towards the end of the year, and through 2023. So any further increase in interest rates, way above what the markets were already anticipating, will push the economy into recession. And what's going on in the US right now, yes, they surprised the markets by raising rates by 0.75%, which was quite a shock. But what happened with it is that A, they reduced their forecast for growth very significantly, and B, the markets immediately upgraded their expectations of how high interest rates would go. And with it, the market started to think we're into recession territory. So it's a very fine balance to strike between pushing expectations and therefore everything that people do, because you can, with expectations, bring the economy down much faster than if perhaps the expectation is a slightly more optimistic one about what may happen over the next few months. So it is very, very tricky for them.